Here is something that crossed my mind recently. So, when we listen to psychologists or YouTube vloggers or gurus of all kinds who give us advice on how to live a more successful life and whatnot, uh, often the advice that you hear, or at least it's, in my opinion, it's becoming more common recently. I'm starting to notice that in order to be a healthy person, not even in order to be a happy person, in order to be a healthy person psychologically, they would give you the advice to put it this way, live your life on your own terms. Meaning, often you can hear a phrase, if you want to have a healthy life, do what you like and do not do what you don't like. This sounds simple, right? But at the same time, the first reaction that usually people have to that is like, well, I mean, what about all the obligations that I have to my relatives, my friends, and so on and so forth? Wouldn't it be selfish to live your life only on your own terms and disregard what anyone else is thinking, and so on and so forth? But the answer to this, that this gurus, psychologists slash vloggers slash whomever give to that, is that yes, that's the only way. You might, and they admit that's an interesting part. They would say, well, there is a chance that you would lose certain people in your life, that you would lose certain material benefits that you have in your life. In general, they do provide this disclaimer. They say, well, you be ready that your life will change. So they do not conceal that. They tell it openly, right? But the problem is, and like to make it a bit more clear, I'll give an example. So I was listening to a podcast by this psychologist, right? And he was talking about this exact problem. He was giving the exactly this advice that I mentioned. Live your life on your own terms. Don't think too much about what everyone else is thinking. Do what you want. Do not do what you do not want. And then everything will be fine. You'll live a healthy life as a healthy person, not neurotic. And then he gives an example of his own life. He says, well, I've been working at a certain company where I was making $15,000 a year, a month, which is a lot of money. And then when I decided to start living my life on my own terms, it changed, right? So he was giving an example of what kind of changes you should be prepared for in case you decide to follow his advice. He was saying, well, I did that myself, so I was one of those people who tried to be conformist, who thought all the time what everyone else was thinking about the way they behave. And then at some point he decided to make a change and do what he wants to do and not do what he doesn't want to do. And he admitted himself that cost him $15,000 a month in his salary, which he lost because he didn't like his boss, and he told him openly about that, and obviously was fired. and he didn't mention whether he lost some personal relationships, friendships or whatnot, romantic. He didn't talk about that, but he mentioned this one fact, so that he lost his salary of $15,000 a month. Now, my reaction to this is, well, $15,000 a month is a pretty rare salary, right? I mean, if you're making $15,000 a month, in certain countries, like even in the classically what's considered to be wealthy Western countries, like in Europe, maybe not in the States, but in Europe for sure, if you're making $15,000 a year, a month, then you are probably in at least top 5% of the population, measured on your income, right? So you're doing pretty great compared to the average and compared to the majority of people, right, around you. So what I mean to say is, if he's been working in this position for, let's say, several years and has been making 15K every month, well, that means that if he is at least a little bit smart about how he approaches money, his finances, and I think he would be, like, he would have enough smart to I mean, if he is a psychologist, like, judging by the way he talks and presents himself and like conducts his podcasts, I think he would have enough brain for that, right? So if he is like that and he was making 15K a month for several years, I'm pretty sure he managed to save up quite a bit of it, right? So, I mean, like, some sort of, security buffer, as you might call it. Otherwise, I mean, like, if he was making 15K a month and was spending it all on on what? I mean, you like, you can have a pretty lavish lifestyle, I have to say, if you're making 15K a month and spending it all. I mean, it would be ridiculous. He wasn't making an impression that he's the kind of person who would be spending everything. So if he was saving up and had this security buffer, then of course, I mean, well, not of course, but it makes it much easier to live life on your own terms than in this situation when you're starting from zero, let's say. I mean, what I believe these people should be doing, psychologists, vloggers, gurus, and so on and so forth, when they are talking about living life on your own terms, self-love, taking care of your own needs first, not thinking too much about what everyone else is thinking, doing what you like, not doing what you don't like. They should qualify that. If they were completely crystal 100% honest to you, they should be qualifying this recommendation by not only saying that it might cost you, like, your current material possession or like current material benefits in some relationships with some people. They should also qualify that this advice does not suit everybody, right? And like, the extent to which you have to follow this advice depends on your personal situation, and like where you are, what you're doing. I mean, it's two very different things. If you are following this advice while you are, let's say, are just fresh out of college, got your first job, let's say, and don't like your boss or the people that you're working with or the type of things that you are doing in your position, and you listen to this advice of someone who is telling you, well, live your life on your own terms, don't do what you don't like, do what you do like. I mean, if you follow this advice when you're, let's say, 21, 22, and it's your first job, right? You quit, let's say, or get into an argument or into conflict with your boss, right? And get fired on the spot and then cannot find a job. You don't have any savings, right? You cannot take care, like, without this job, let's say. I mean, it's awesome if you have a profession that is really in high demand, and like, having quit one job, you can easily go into a different one. If there is just so much demand for the type of thing that you're doing, that you can easily do that. But in most professions, I have to say, I mean, everyone, it's not the case. Like, everyone is educated these days. Like, everyone has higher education. Everyone has a bachelor's degree. Almost everyone has a master's degree, right? Like, I can only think of a couple of industries or professions maybe where the demand is so high that having quit one job, you can easily switch to a different one within, let's say, a couple weeks. Not too many of those professions around there. So, if you're not one of those lucky people to have a profession that is in such high demand, and you follow this advice and quit, and are left without income, so what do you do? I mean, like, I'm pretty sure that maybe you will be happy for a couple days that you're able to stand up for yourself, right? And, like, declare aloud the things that you don't like, and that you follow your passions and so on and so forth. But after a while, having experienced material difficulties, I'm pretty sure you will not be that happy, right? I mean, the unfortunate reality of life is that you have to provide for yourself somehow, right? If you cannot do that, well, no one's gonna do it. And again, sure, you can say, oh, like I mean, depending on your personality, but I guess some people can say, well, if I quit my first job and I was left for several months without any material, any income, and wouldn't be able to support myself, well, depending on your family circumstances, some people would say, well, I mean, I could turn to my friends to support me, I could turn to my parents, and so on and so forth. But then again, you are then you become dependent on those people who would be helping you, your friends and your family in this case, even if this scenario is possible in your situation, even if they don't mind to help you, right? Let's say you borrow some money from your friends and they don't mind giving it to you, or you go back to your parents, let's say, and ask them to provide material support, and they don't mind providing material support, right? You become dependent on them. Before that, you were dependent on your boss. Now you're dependent on those other people who you're going to, right? I mean, makes sense or not? And then yeah. So the point of this video, just to summarize, and not to spend any more time rambling, is that you like these people who give this advice, they should be honest with you and should tell you, yeah, I have to say, I do agree with what they are proposing. I mean, I'm not criticizing the whole premise of, like, living life on the way you want to live it, but there is a good saying, actually. I mean, it sounds a bit harsh, but I've heard it in the sphere that I work in. People saying that it applies. Usually, this phrase, when people say it, it applies to doing business, but I think it applies in this situation as well. Meaning, like, in the problem of looking for a happier, healthier life. People say it's better to be long-term greedy, right? And so, like, when this applies to business, what they mean is be honest with your clients, right? Try to build long-term relationships with your clients. Don't try to rip them off. Don't try to, take advantage of them in the short term, right? Because if you do that, they would never come back for your service. What people advise, be long-term greedy, meaning if you want to make a lot of business with this client, if you want them to, keep providing you, keep buying your service or product over the long term, thus supporting you materially, be honest with them, provide the best service you can to them, and they will be coming back, right? So be long-term greedy. But in our situation, it's a bit different, right? So when we say be long-term oriented, we don't even have to say, well, be long-term greedy, because it doesn't exactly apply. Be long-term oriented. You have to be long-term oriented, meaning that you have to assess what's your long-term goal, where do you want to be, right? And what does it cost to get there? And then when you've assessed that, when you've determined that, you go back and and then decide whether it's now is the right time to live life on your own terms, or maybe it's the time to put your head down a little bit and comply with someone else's terms, if it gives you an opportunity in the future to live a more happier life as you want it. So that's all I wanted to say. It's been a long video, so apologies for making this rant so long. But let's wrap up for now. And if you have any comments or want to discuss that, I would appreciate your comments in the section below. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you have similar experience, or if you had similar thoughts, or if you have different thoughts. Please comment. Let me know. I would appreciate a discussion. Bye.